All right. Welcome to the Seacoast podcast, everyone. I'm excited for you to hear this. I'm excited. Every episode, I'm excited for our listeners to hear. We're here with Rebecca and Tim Lindsay, and we have just sat through 5 different powerful stories of life change and just folks whose lives have been impacted through unstoppable growth, a ministry we're about to learn more about with you guys. So as listeners, you're just going to be in for a treat to get to know 5 different people. And as you get to know them and their stories, you get to learn about unstoppable growth. And how we're going to start this episode is kind of giving a general picture, a snapshot of what unstoppable growth is. And having listened to these 5 people, I've got some questions that I wasn't going to work into that conversation because I knew we were going to start with this conversation. So I've got questions for you guys as well. But thank y'all for putting this together. And man, that was such a treat for me just to hear people and their stories, and it's got to be so rewarding for you guys to be a part of this sort of growth in people's lives and just seeing life change and then hearing how their life change has affected people in their lives. I mean, that's just got to be such a blessing to you guys.
It is. And it's still in awe for me.
Yeah.
It's, I grew up Christian my parents being pastors, and we've planted some church. Like church was always part of our life, and it's so important to me. And then get to be part of something where people get impacted with Jesus. And so it's not just a course. And then hearing the stories, and then it's, wow, God, it's really working. You are working. And so that's what makes me just so thankful to be part of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like you just said, it's just amazing. Like you do a lot of things administratively. You put together a course, you talk to people, you write your emails, you have these calls or whatever. And the thought crosses your mind, my mind anyway, every now and again, is what I'm actually doing having an impact? Is it changing lives?
And sometimes we don't really get the full answer to that question.
Exactly. Yeah. So like the 10 lepers, only 2 came back to say thank you, but 10 were healed. And that's the same with a lot of church, programs that we do, lives that are changed. We don't always hear back from the different people, but it was so good to hear those different stories and hear back and be so encouraged.
All right, before I jump into a lot of specific questions, I got to know, because I'm heading in this direction. My youngest is in the 7th grade, and I'm telling you, we were talking about this morning. Older people have told me it happens in a blink. Before you know it, your kids will be grown and out of the house. And you just don't understand how much of a blink it is until you've walked through it. Now I'm like, my youngest is 7th grade. This time, 6 years from now, I'm going to be empty nesting.
Yeah.
I personally am not dreading that. I know I'm going to be sad to see each of them go, but I also think that will be somewhat of a sweet season as well. Yeah. But I want to hear from folks who are living it out. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how is empty nesting?
Empty nesting on a scale of 1 to 10. Oh, I got to put it up there. 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
I mean, like when I think about, because you've lived your whole life, you have all these different experiences. You're starting to put them into order. They're starting to make sense. And then you know what you like, what you don't like. And so you're starting to you're able to put a life together, which is not determined by, children. Children determine your life for the longest amount of time. And you can start asking each other. The most important thing, of course, is that you have gotten along with your spouse. And that was something like, after raising all the children, how's it going to be for us? But it's turned out to be really good.
Yeah.
And it was always something we worked towards too. We always had the goal when they're 18, we want them to be able to handle their finances, make decisions, live independent. And so we had this goal, what happens after 18? So this means, where are we during those years with the children at home, and being excited, hey, now we get to have time alone.
Yeah.
And not getting interrupted, or not always, what are the needs now around the children?
And you two, and not everybody gets this, y'all can reflect on your parenting season and be like, we weren't perfect, but we did a good job. Like we finished the race.
Yeah.
We fought the good fight. We finished the race with parenting.
But it's all God's grace.
Yes.
Because we have friends who finished the race and put in maybe more effort into being at all those baseball games and all those football games and all that kind of stuff. And we weren't always able to be a part of all their lives in the intricacy of some other folks that we know. But God has pulled through, and I think that's also another important perspective that God's given us, because with our youngest child, when we came over to the States, we had 3 years of very, very difficult situations. And there was so many times that I thought I was the worst father in the world. There were so many times that I thought, I got it wrong. And my son would react the way he reacted meant that I didn't fulfill the role that I was supposed to play. But then to see his turnaround now, he's back in church. He's recommitted his life to Christ. His girlfriend has given her life to Christ. They've got baptized. They're serving in the church. It's an unbelievable turnaround, an amazing story. And people are coming to me and saying, "Oh, you must have been a great father." No, no. I know I'm not.
I'm sure that's not totally true, but I just start, and I'm thinking this is probably going to be my last parenting book that I read, just because I see all the books in line for me to read, and I'm like, this is probably the last one. It was such a good reminder. It's called Love and Logic, and they wrote one, I think, for parenting in general. I'm reading the teen version, and in the introduction it says, a lot of times we forget that adolescence is a season for our kids. It has a beginning and end, and parenting adolescence is also, it's a season. So a lot of the challenges that we have with teen kids, it's specific to that season. I'm not saying that it's not going to be hard seeing my kids as adults, have to navigate through life and everything, but this season it's temporary.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so with Unstoppable Growth, having heard from 5 different people who have been a part, it sounds like a life coaching program with a huge emphasis on the spiritual. But take me back. I remember when you guys, I think, were doing Unstoppable Duos, and it was focusing on marriages, and I know that it was a podcast. Was that a curriculum also that was geared specifically toward married couples? And was that kind of the beginning of how all this stuff happened?
Yeah, that was kind of the beginning. So in 2020, COVID broke out. We had some extra time. We're thinking to ourselves, what are we doing during the season? How can we redeem the time? And then the idea was, we've had so many pastors, teachers, coaches in our lives who have given us so many gold nuggets that we've been able to employ in our lives. And why can't we just bring these all together, package them in a way that maybe like a manual that we could give to our kids? And then we say, hey guys, this is like, out of everything that we've learned, this is the most important things that we've learned.
They were helpful.
It's almost like a curation of everything that's been impactful to you guys.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then we jotted everything down, we wrote everything down, and then we said, okay, let's order it. If they were to go through this book, what would be the first thing that we'd like them to do, the second thing that we'd like them, and we'd order it. And then we're looking at it and we're like, this is cool. Let's do this. Let's do this with a group of people. And so we invited our first round of Unstoppable. There was 22 people in the room in Dream Team Central at the Mount Pleasant campus, and 20 of them were couples. So we had 10 couples and 2 singles. And it wasn't meant to be a marriage thing. We just invited our friends. But they get into women's groups and men's groups. So we're separating them out. We're processing what we're hearing. And then at the end of the course, everybody's like, my marriage has been transformed.
Healed, whatever.
We had people, people that confessed to an affair. We had men who were struggling with pornography. We had just normal people looking for their next step in their marriage or whatever. But if they start talking amongst themselves as men and start talking amongst themselves as women, so many of the marriage courses bring them together. And the men aren't going to talk about men things when the wives are in the room, and women aren't going to do that. So they're talking about these things themselves, and then they're going back home and they're getting the same question. So the first question is, for instance, what specific breakthrough are you praying for? Well, ask that to a couple. Most of them are going to want a specific breakthrough in their marriage. So they're going home in their car. How did you answer that question?
Right.
How did you answer that question?
Right.
And so they're having this,
That's cool because the question is not directed to a married couple, but like you said, for married couples, that's one of the givens.
That's one of the givens. It's going to be high up on their list. So we felt like at the very beginning, okay, this is something that God's calling us to invest in couples. And so we just found ways of gathering couples together and through the podcast, connecting with other people who are doing great things as couple ministries. But then after about 2 rounds, we realized we can't limit this to couples. This is for everybody. We had young people, we had old people, we had people like that were just getting retired, wondering what their next step was, to people who were trying to break an addiction, to people who were just invited by somebody, like we've heard in all of these different stories and testimonies. Yeah.
One of the things in the second third of the course, it is when we teach the 5 capitals. And so very often what people do is like they go through a round focusing on one of the capitals, how to grow it, and then go to another one. And this time I want to grow this capital. And so there are different ways of why people want to go for it. But I think for most people is when they go through it, sometimes it feels like you think you need that until you realize it's not really this what you need, it's something else. Or sometimes you fight about something and you realize it's not even the thing we're fighting about. And so maybe the motivation is that people come and say, I do want a healing for that, or I want to get clarity in that. But in the end, I think what we all need to learn again, and what the experience is with you, I think, say it in one of the interviews now with the people, is that you almost take a step back and you start looking in your life again and you start seeing where you're missing God. And with becoming more intentional, you start allowing him to be more part of your life, and you meet God in all the things. And that's the more. The more is not really the more income, or finally have a spouse, or I have healing in my body. The more is really, I'm really meeting my Father in heaven, and he's part in everything. And as soon as you realize that and you learn how to do that, you want to keep this lifestyle going. And it helps very often to stay in Unstoppable for that, or stay in groups that live with those questions in Unstoppable.
Yeah. As the 2 leaders of this, how do y'all feel about my depiction of it being almost like life coaching with a spiritual emphasis? Would y'all say, yeah, that sounds right?
No, I'd say absolutely life coaching in the sense that so Rebecca is an expert coach, and she knows, like we heard it a couple of times, she knows how to ask questions and what questions to ask. And so basically what we've spent our time doing over all these rounds is helping people ask questions. And so what comes across as life coaching doesn't have to be called life coaching. It could be any small group. But the problem is that most small groups that happen are more sort of like you have a facilitator and there's a general conversation. I'll ask who's the leader. Nobody really knows who the leader is. It's more relational. And so this isn't relational in that sense. This is a program. You get a small group leader who's intentional, who knows the questions, who knows to ask the second and third question, so that we can really help people grow. And participants have to put themselves into a student mindset. They have to put themselves into the participant mindset. You're not coming to Unstoppable Growth because you want to impart something. You're coming there because you want to learn something.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that experience the most breakthrough.
Yeah, that's a distinction. I mean, it's a small group, but it's a specific kind of small group.
You're not getting advice there. So we tend, because we all have so much life experience, you know what, this is what helped me, Joy. Why don't you try this one out? And a lot of time coaching is understood like that. I tell you what to do. Or even discipleship is understood like that. We tell you what to do. But when Jesus said, imitate me like I imitate my Father, so life coaching means maybe we want to help you living a life worth imitating, which is in the end being a disciple, being the learner. And so that's the main goal for us. I mean, our main goal is we want to see a million disciples, 1 million people going to go through, 1 million people falling in love with Jesus, living a life full of intention and the purpose that God has given them. And so it is... if life coaching helps you to become this disciple, it's not just the learning, it's not the knowledge, it's really understanding who God is in my life, and then I'm going to live it out. Then we reached it.
I think that's so important what you're saying, because like, what had the biggest impact in my life? Why did we even sit down to write this book? Was that I had coaches in my life at every specific breakthrough that I went through, whether it was financial breakthrough, health breakthrough, or a breakthrough in leadership. There was always a pastor. There was always a coach, a person there who helped me up. And I think that's why it became so important to me. Discipleship, development of people, leadership, is because I can see how much I grew through somebody else. And now we can provide some kind of a structure for other people to experience the same thing, that they have somebody in their lives who will lift them up, help them up. But then you need to have both. You need to have somebody who's willing to step in and ask those questions. And that's one thing in the South that people don't like doing. They don't like going into conversations and confronting, challenging, asking. They love to be there encouraging, and they love to be the cheerleader and pats on the back. Well, you don't grow through cheerleading. You don't grow through everybody here thinks they grow through cheerleading. They think they grow through encouragement, but you don't. You grow through both encouragement and challenge. So somebody has to ask the question, and then somebody has to pat on, preferably the same person in the small group experience.
A follow-up question.
Yeah.
So how are you? How are you really doing? So we have the thing here in the South, hey, how are you? As a greeting. And everybody knows we ignore it or say, that's great. But that's the cheering level. And it's a follow-up question. No, how are you really doing?
Right.
And so that's when we go to the deep thing. And that's when we can encounter God again, not being afraid to going deeper. This is what Jesus did. He always went deep with people.
What are the 5 capitals? There's 5 of them, right?
Yeah, 5 capitals. So the first one is spiritual. That's the most important. Then relational. Then physical capital, then intellectual, your thoughts, and then financial at the end.
Gotcha.
We really say the most important one is your spiritual. You can have a great life with a small amount of finances. You can have a great life if you're not that clever. But then your life starts to go really bad when you're unhealthy. You don't have that physical capital. When you have no relationships, it's really difficult when you're isolated. If no eternal life, no spiritual capital, no relationship with God, it's over.
Hope. Yeah.
And I think, Tim, you've explained this to me, but I'd love for our listeners to hear, how has this been incorporated into Seacoast culture?
Yeah. So we started out at Seacoast. What I love about Seacoast isn't like a farm where you have all the grain, like there's one crop in the farm, and then this tractor goes and plows it, and we're super effective, super efficient. Seacoast is like a field. And in the field, you'll find flowers over here. You'll find, an orange tree over here, a pear tree. All of a sudden, you realize you're growing bananas. Who's growing those bananas? Who's responsible for those bananas? And at the beginning, it was difficult for me at Seacoast, having all these multiple crop and knowing what's important and what's not, and who's telling me that. But then I realized this is a gift from God, and this is how Unstoppable. So it started as some kind of a crop over in the field somewhere in a corner, and what happened was just people started experiencing transformation. And now we've had 500 people go through it. We're celebrating 5 years now in September. And so what it's become now is we have like 4 priorities at Seacoast. The first is find God. We do that through weekend services. The second is grow in your faith. We do that through small groups. And then the third is discover your purpose. And that's now Unstoppable Growth.
Okay.
And then make a difference. That's the Dream Team. And so I'm so excited that we get to be one of those priorities, and we get to help people discover their purpose and become disciples, passionate disciples of Christ.
Because one of the outcome from what we see when people go through Unstoppable Growth and they rediscover who they really are, they become intentional in everything, which is an advantage for the church, which means they are showing up more for church. They are starting to serve. They are starting to tithe or even give more. They are going to be part of a small group, because this is how we grow spiritually as well, by making sure I keep on growing, but also making sure I start investing. And so because of almost the return, so not only maybe am I a better spouse at home and at workplace, I'm also going to have that in the church. And I think that's one of the advantages that we see. Oh, wow, they committed. We can depend on them. Let's start growing this.
Yeah. And it's offered online, and I would say that's necessary to reach 1 million people, because we don't have 1 million people around here at Seacoast. So this is something that is open to anyone who wants. It's not just for Seacoast.
We had in the past England, Switzerland, from like all over the world already attending.
Yeah, it's open to everybody, but discipleship is local, because you have to have life on life impact. And you can do that online, absolutely. But we know in order to grow big, we have to start small. In order to grow strong, we have to start like small and weak almost. And that's what we've chosen to do. We've chosen to, build this here at Seacoast Church. We're excited that it's multiplying out to different campuses, have groups now in different ones. And we're excited to grow it beyond that and grow it into other churches and even into the marketplace. It's something that we've already done in the marketplace, and it's been very effective. A little bit of a different language, adapted accordingly. But I'm excited for the impact that it's going to have.
Well, congrats on such good work that's making an impact. And
Thank you.
Let's let our listeners hear these unstoppable stories. How about that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, welcome, Alex Palbath. So excited that you are here on this podcast.
What's up, man?
What a wonderful, wonderful person, a great friend. Went through the unstoppable round. I think it was the third round.
I think so.
Is a colonel, or was a colonel in the Air Force.
Has been.
Past tense.
Dang, colonel is right under general, right?
Yes, yeah.
Nice.
It just means old. That's what it is.
But that confused me when you retired. You're not old, so how could you retire so young?
So young. But I remember Alex inviting me up onto the Air Force Base here in Charleston, getting me into a C-17, into the pilot seat, and just absolutely amazing experience. And also, you were the pilot who flew the last plane out of Afghanistan.
Yep, I did that. It was 2021. That was near the end of my career.
So you were the last pilot to fly out?
Yeah.
From the conflict?
Yeah, Charleston Air Force Base, largest C-17 base in the world. And I was leading the special ops unit out there. And so when that whole thing went down, we got sent forward. And, special ops usually first in, last out kind of thing. And so,
dang.
Yeah, I ended up being the commander for the final evacuation and flew the last airplane out.
Wow. We need to have him on as a main guest, man. I got
Absolutely.
so many questions to ask.
Yeah, I know.
You have his contact now.
So, how long have you been in the Charleston area?
Got here in 2017.
Gotcha.
2017.
How long have you been
Air
at
Force Privates here.
How long have you been at Seacoast?
Since 2017. So,
Okay.
Air Force, I left home. I grew up in SoCal. Left home when I was 18 to go to college at the United States Air Force Academy, which is in Colorado Springs. Met my wife my senior year. She's from Denver. That's another story. I actually met her on spring break in South Padre Island at a Circle K gas station. But she's from Denver.
Every time I drive by a Circle K, it's like I think of you guys.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Met at a Circle
K.
K.
I mean, we were 30 minutes apart.
You don't hear that one too. Hey, where'd you meet your wife, Circle K?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You don't hear that one much.
Yeah.
So did I catch that you're retired from Air Force?
I am retired.
Okay, so how do you spend your time now?
I am a pilot for Southwest Airlines now, and I work for a leadership development consulting firm called Victory Strategies.
Nice.
Doing sort of leadership.
And we were talking a little bit before we push record. You are going on the men's hike and super involved in that whole deal.
Yeah, trying to, being an airline pilot's great, but there's a lot of free time, and especially leaving the military where there's a lot of fulfillment in the career and the job aspects you're doing. Once you transition out of that, you'll see a lot of the airline guys I know, ex-military guys, all have some sort of side hustle. For me, a lot of that's been either in the church or working with the leadership development firm that I'm with.
Gotcha.
Just trying to find a way to continue to be relevant and make an impact rather than just earn a paycheck.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking to a lot of folks in this episode. So we're trying to cover a lot here in a few minutes. But how long would you say you've been a Jesus follower?
I became a Christian on January 1st, 1996.
1996, January 1st.
2 o'clock in the morning, probably. January 1st, easy date to remember. But just a moment with me. I was a junior in high school. Just had a moment between me and God, didn't know. Nobody taught me a prayer to say anything like that. There was something missing in my life, and at whatever time it was, 2 or 3 in the morning, I remember crying out to God. I actually wound up on my knees by myself. I don't remember what I said, but I do remember when I got off my knees that my life was changed forever in that moment. So since January 1st, 1996.
Man, I love hearing that. All right, well, you got to pick 3 out of 10 questions we threw your way. So let us have it.
Yeah. Remind me of the topic again.
Yeah. So,
I went through them all. I got them. But
hobby of yours, one of the favorite things you own, one of the most influential people in your life, one of the hardest things you've ever had to go through, one of the best things that's happened to you.
Yeah, those are the 3. Those
Okay.
are you just said there. One of the most influential people in my life is my wife, Lyndon. She's amazing. She's 2 years younger than me. I told you I met her when I was 22. She was only 20, but we became best friends right away. We got married just a year later. I was 23. She was 21. Started a family, and she's been on the Air Force. We did the Air Force journey together. So we left Colorado and went Mississippi, Seattle, St. Louis, Sacramento, Washington, D.C., and then Charleston since 2017. And, marriages, we've married for 23 years. Marriage is hard. It's a miracle that we're together, but
Me
that's
too,
what God
23.
does.
So you got married in 2002, I'm assuming?
Yeah, 2002.
Yeah.
You got it.
Well, what's the month?
May.
Okay. We got married August 2nd. So
May 25th, 2002. So she's a remarkably educated woman. She's got 2 master's degrees. She's in the medical field. She's accomplished a lot in her life too. But God has always used her to speak to me, which has been amazing. So all the big decisions in life, I know when I get affirmation from her that we're on the right path. And so we're excited about. We've done a lot of life together, and we're excited about like this next chapter. Our oldest kid is about to go to college, so the empty nesty thing, and we're terribly sad about losing our kids. Our family's awesome, but we're really excited about spending more time with each other. So she lets me know when I'm screwing up. She keeps me on. She keeps me on the right track all the time.
Keeps you on track.
Yeah, and I love it. She's still my best friend today. So it's pretty awesome to have a best friend with benefits like that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. What else you want to hit up from this list? Most influential person?
Yeah.
And then best thing that's happened, worst thing that's happened?
Yeah, there's one on there.
I can tell
What
you.
was the next question?
Yep. So after that, one of the hardest things you ever had to go through?
I'll tell you. Let's talk about that for a minute, because this is the evacuation from Afghanistan. So as a career C-17 pilot and eventually a commander here at the base, if you remember in August of 2021, sort of the chaos that happened in Kabul, Afghanistan with the withdrawal there, what had happened is America announced that we were leaving the country, and the citizens of Kabul sort of panicked when they actually saw our airplanes at Kabul International Airport. They saw airplanes there. They heard that we were leaving, and there was a little bit of misconception on the part of the populace there that started the panic that we were leaving that day. We weren't leaving that day, but they thought we were. And what was happening on the outskirts of the city was the Taliban had moved in. And, knowing that the Taliban is a pretty terrible organization, they're a terrorist organization, but they're also a very well-formed government. And there's a lot of them. Okay, so they surrounded the city, and for 20 years, we had been in Afghanistan employing Afghanis to work for us. Well, those local Afghanis knew that if the Taliban found out they were supporting America, that they would be killed. And probably not just them. Probably their entire family would be killed. I mean, this is literally a life and death thing for them. And so they panicked and they rushed the airfield. And if everybody remembers that time, it was August 16th, 2021, when the field was sort of overrun. So we were there. I was there with my team. Witnessing firsthand that sort of panic. And then
Was that when people were like hanging on to
yes.
planes?
Yeah. So that airplane was, some of my guys, there was the pilots, that was a Charleston airplane. The pilots were right here from Charleston, local guys who went through that. That's a longer story. One of the things I talk about in the leadership company I work with, I do a lot of speaking. This is what we talk about. So that we can get really in depth into that later. But the gist of that, what made that so difficult was that was the first day. Like that, people hanging off that airplane, 5 people died that day from literally falling off of the airplane as it was flying away. and then that launched a 16-day, chaotic ordeal where we flew some of the hardest days of flying like most of us have ever had, both just physically and emotionally. It just was a really, really challenging time leading up to August 31st, or the night of August 30th into the 31st, where I ended up flying the last airplane out. So just that entire ordeal was tough, tough on everything too, because what I didn't know, being in Kabul on the day when the people fell off that airplane, I watch all this happen. It's, crazy. Our minds are blown about it. We fly back to our main operating base 3 hours away. I have no idea that this has been all over the news. Because, that was live streamed on Twitter by an Afghani. We didn't know that. I had no idea. So like I get back, and my phone's not on. I'm flying, I'm working or whatever. And I get back and we were like, kind of decompressing ourselves. Like, man, that was crazy. We shower, go to eat. Well, eventually, I turn my phone back on, and my phone is just blowing up, and my wife is like, "Are you okay?" kind of thing. So, so we're dealing with that too, trying to the people back home. Hey, I'm fine, I'm here, but we're going to be here for a little while, and sort of having to balance both those things.
Yeah,
my kids are seeing it on TV; they know it's great. It was a crazy time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your services. That's very emotional for sure to have to go through that. All right, one more.
What's the very next question on there?
One of the best things that's happened to you. You like that one?
Yeah, one of the best things happened to me was my kids. So I told you, my wife is amazing, highly educated woman. We had these grand plans when we got married that we were going to get established in our careers, and we were going to have kids later. We were going to do our thing, and God had different plans. We had been married for about a year and a half when Lyndon came to me, and I still remember the day. She said, "Alex, get in here. I'm pregnant," just like that. So all at once.
So you heard it from another room.
Shocked both of us, but so I was 25 when I just turned 25. Lyndon was 23 when my son was born. And then we decided, well, I guess we're in it now. So my daughter was born a little while after that. And so we were very young parents, but both of our kids are amazing. And I would say both of them, even though they moved around a lot, I was born in Southern California, Lyndon was born in Colorado, my son was born in Seattle, and my daughter was born in Texas on our way to St. Louis.
Wow.
So just the typical military family. And they grew up moving all around. But when we got here, one of the reasons we decided to retire and stay here is because of Seacoast Church. We moved here in 2017. And every time we moved as a military family, we would, church shop, right? Mm-hmm. You kind of just go try out local churches. Well, somebody told us, hey, go check out Seacoast. We came to Seacoast the first Sunday, and we never went to another church since we've been here. So fully committed that day. And through Seacoast Church at middle school summer camp, custom summer camp, my son got saved.
Wow.
And my daughter not long after that, and my son is now entering the ministry. He's at Liberty University studying to pastoral leadership to become a church pastor, and he's worked at Seacoast. It's been hugely influential in my daughter's life as well. She's about to leave this week for her third or fourth mission trip with Seacoast, and then she'll be going to a private Christian school next year as well in Florida. So having kids when we did, and being able to be a young dad, is awesome. I got to when I was home, when I wasn't deployed, I got to coach my kid in a lot of things. I was a wrestler, and my son became a wrestler, and having that, being able to do those kinds of things as a dad was amazing. By far, the best thing that happened to us was having kids at a young age.
Yeah. Nice. Well, unstoppable growth. What were you hoping to learn, or was there anything that you were desiring to heal from?
I'll tell you, I didn't really know what. Neither of us knew we were getting ourselves into when we joined Unstoppable Growth.
Yeah.
It was John Gilmer who we saw in church one day, who said, "Hey, you should look into this." My wife and I were looking at. Here's what I'd say: is we were in a good place spiritually, but we just felt stagnant.
This is how many years ago ish?
This is 4 years ago.
Okay.
When did it start?
5 years ago. Yeah,
5
about 4 years ago.
20, yeah.
So it's probably 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were session 3 or whatever. So, so we felt stagnant in growth. Like we were in a good spot, but we just didn't feel like we were, you go to church and you read on your own and do these things, and we're involved in small groups, and we're serving in the church, and we're doing all the things that are great. They're all those great things. But we were looking to be pushed a little bit. and I would say if you're studying something in school that you love and you want to learn more, maybe you go get a master's degree in that, and if you continue to love it, maybe you go get a PhD. Well, what is that for our faith? We were kind of in this spot where like we love it, where you are, and we need to be pushed a little bit more. And so what we found in Unstoppable was exactly that. And my testimony about Unstoppable, why it is continuing to be so incredibly impactful to me, is specifically because of the 5 capitals that are taught. And the way that I describe it to people is this is a way to evaluate all the specific aspects of your faith. So I would say before Unstoppable, you get asked this question like, oh, how's your walk?
Sure.
How's your walk with Jesus? And you would say, good.
Yeah.
Or, struggling right now or whatever.
Right. And if you're not close to the person, you're like, why would you ask me that?
Yeah. It's like such a common question in the Christian faith. Like, how's your walk? Well, it's also a very broad question.
Yeah.
And the Unstoppable process brought specifics to that question. So now I would say, well, relationally, my walk is great. I'm in a small group. I'm connected to other men. I'm going on the Seacoast men's hike. Like relationally, like things are great. But maybe physically I'm struggling right now. And this is traditionally like one of mine. I try to live like a disciplined life, and which means for me, I want to get up early in the morning. I want to do my quiet time. I want to go to the gym, and I want to get the day started. And if you don't have anything like pushing yourself. So as an airline guy, when I'm not flying an airplane, I'm just at home doing whatever I want. And so it'd be pretty easy to like, I don't got to get up. My alarm just went off at 5:30 in the morning. I can hit snooze. And then what happens? Like, there goes your quiet time. If you hit snooze again, you're like, well, there goes the gym. So what I found for me was, all right, how do I correct that problem? That actually isn't a me waking up in the morning problem. That's a me going to bed at the night before problem. And so through this process, I sort of understood like, hey, if I want to maintain a strong physical relationship, the physical capital in my spiritual life, then I need to be disciplined about when I go to bed. And I never really thought about it that way. That, hey, this isn't a sleep problem. This is a going to sleep problem. And it was like bringing that practical application to my faith. That was a game changer for me and Unstoppable. And you can say the same thing about everything else. Like how, maybe finances aren't great for you. Like you're doing your quiet time every day and it's great, but your finances are right. Well, maybe you start digging into that financial capital a little bit and figure out what you need to change in your life. So
yeah, it sounds like it covers all the bases.
It covers all the bases, and the 5 capitals are the spiritual capital, which is the most important one, and then your relational capital, and so goes in order, and then your physical capital, which involves your calendar, rest, and all that kind of stuff as well, and then your intellectual calendar, what are you thinking, your intellectual capital, and then your financial capital. And it's been an awesome process where Unstoppable Growth participants will put those 5 capitals up on their vision board, and then they'll have a goal or 2 goals or maybe even 3 goals per capital for that year, just to really grow in all areas. And the fact that God wants us to grow is so important to really realize and acknowledge and say, okay, I'm going to grow. Because a lot of times, just like you said, we stay put in the area that we're in, and it's sort of like a false sense of Christian humility. Oh, I don't want to, grow. I don't want to be, I don't want other people to see me above myself or whatever, becoming too proud or whatever. But no, God wants us to grow. And I love that you took that so seriously and so specifically, dialing it down to actually going to bed earlier.
Yeah. I remember that conversation. I think we were in Holly and H's backyard, and then you defended like sleep is overrated.
Yeah.
I do say that a lot. Sleep is overrated.
Yeah, it's so true. You said sleep is overrated. So we were talking about YouTube clips and how we spend our time.
But you get plenty of sleep when you're dead. Yeah. I mean, I still maintain that to be true, but you do need some sleep. Once I get under 6 hours. 6 hours I'm fine, but under that, then it's just Anyway, yeah, you're right. If you've ever you read about how can a goal be effective, right? They need to be specific, they need to be measurable, and they need to be attainable. And so when you look at the 5 spiritual capitals, now you can do that. Now you can set some very specific measurable and attainable goals by focusing on those 5 capitals, rather than just saying, I want to get closer to God. So what are you going to do? I'm going to read, I'm going to go to church more.
Yeah.
I'm going to read more. I don't, how it's really difficult to be specific and measurable unless you have objective criteria. And that's what the 5 spiritual capitals bring.
Nice. Nice. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. We now have Brian Thorne with us here in the podcast studio.
That's a cool last name. Thorne?
Thorne, Thorne.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I like it.
Y'all listen to this. So my brother and his wife made a deal with each other that if they had girls, she could name them, and if they had boys, he could name them. To this day, we'll never know if it would have happened because they never had a boy. We've got Norwegian background. My brother really loves our Norwegian background. He's going to name the boy Thornston and then Thor for short. And we're like, Jared, you just can't do that. He's just like, we have a boy. Watch me. All right, I interrupted.
I love that.
I've got some funny Thorne stories. I actually almost married a woman named Rose.
Really?
So her name would have been Rose Thorne.
Oh my God.
It didn't work out for obvious reasons, but
For obvious reasons. That's funny. It's so good. Well, Brian has been with us. I think you went through the 5th round of Unstoppable.
Spring 2023.
Spring 2023 with his wife, Danielle. They became Unstoppable Growth small group leaders, and they now lead Saturday mornings at Unstoppable Growth, about 30 to 40.
Our biggest group.
Our biggest group that up there. And just so many great stories of transformation that come out of that group. You are VP of Consulting, Marketing Consulting.
Sales Consulting.
Sales Consulting.
Yep.
Thank you very much. And have helped build up a firm. Remind me of that name again.
It's Monarch is a company I work for,
Yes.
but I'm going to be starting my own LLC.
Oh.
So going to break out on my own. Still have him as a client, but I think it's time to do my own thing.
And you were one of the first 10 employees
At HubSpot.
at HubSpot.
Yep. So a software company out of Boston that had a very successful IPO, spent 9.5 years there. And that was a really cool experience in my life. To be able to start at a company, be employee number 30, and then when I left, there was 4,000 people. So that was a really cool experience.
Yeah.
Different field.
So he's really smart.
No,
really
not at all.
he's-
No, not that's the funny part.
I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting maybe cut it out, but not.
But what I love about Brian, if I was to describe him, it'd be a word that he's often put on his vision board, and that is submission. He submits to the process. So he's gone through, whether it's Next Steps or Unstoppable or serving, on the Dream Team, he's always submitting to the leader, submitting to the process, and not always raising the flag and saying we should do this and do that, but just engaging with what he's going through so that God can do something great in his life. And we've seen God do great things, in his life, which he'll tell us all about.
Very cool.
Wasn't always that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we get to your story and how it involves unstoppable growth, let's let the listeners in a little bit more too on your personal life. So how long have you been in the Charleston area? Where were you born, actually?
I was actually born in Maine, raised in Massachusetts, outside of Boston.
Okay. Are we Celtic fan?
In the 80s, I loved them.
Right.
But, Bird, McHale, that
Right.
whole team, they were
Right.
great. I'm unfortunately a Lakers fan right now.
What happened?
Unfortunately.
I'm never going back to Boston. I loved living there,
Yeah.
but this is my home now.
Yeah.
So I can venture off.
Yeah. How long have you been in this area?
5 years.
Okay. And then how long have you been in the Seacoast world, been part of this church?
When we moved down here, the pandemic hit day 2 of us living here. And I think we probably went to Seacoast once or twice, and then everything went remote.
Oh, wow.
And then once it picked up again live, unless we're on vacation, we haven't missed a Sunday.
Dang. That's cool. That's cool. And did you grow up in the church, as a believer? No. When would you say you gave your heart to Christ?
Yeah, I would say I was probably 13 when I gave my heart to Christ, but that was my mother, on the way to church saying, say this prayer. And I did. And I went to church camp when I was in junior high. But I definitely did not live that life up until 4 years ago,
Gotcha.
I would say, since really Unstoppable Growth or starting to serve kind of led me back to Christ. And then it was through Unstoppable Growth that I was able to submit. And so I would say really I've been saved for a couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Sweet. Well, we gave you a list of 10 things that you could choose from. Do you want me to jog your memory, or do you have your 3 that
Let's see. I actually picked a tough one, which was something tough that I went through in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because it kind of led me to South Carolina. My parents got divorced when I was 10, and my grandparents took us in.
Wow. Okay.
And so they kind of raised me, and I absolutely adored my grandparents. My grandmother was my best friend growing up. She was hilarious.
That's sweet.
She had a great sense of humor. My grandfather, not so much, but he took us in, and I'll always appreciate that. He taught me hard work and kind of how to take care of a family. But within 2 years, I had lost my grandfather, my grandmother, and my dog.
Wow.
Whoa.
And that was probably the closest I've ever been to depression.
Wow.
I'm a pretty...
The grandparents you were living with.
Yeah.
Wow.
They had moved to the Cape,
Yeah.
but I was still super close to them.
Sure.
And I really did think of them as my parents. My mother was just here. I love my mom, but she was probably more like a sister growing up. And yeah, it was a tough 2 years. It was my grandfather died in his sleep. I got a phone call in the morning. I was like, what the heck? And then my grandmother just kind of went downhill after that. And at the same time, my dog, who I had lived with since I was like 26 years old, started to get sick. So I lost like two people and like a really good friend in a really short period of time.
Yeah.
But what that did do is, if I put a positive spin on it, I would have never left Massachusetts if my grandparents were still alive. Like, they were just too much part of my life to ever leave Massachusetts. And I think once my grandmother passed, I was like, I'm kind of not tied here anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that allowed me to explore, like, what could I do next in my life?
Yeah.
So when I think back, it was like, in a weird way, it kind of led me to moving down here to Charleston.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot of loss all
was.
in one
Yeah.
little span of time for sure. A couple more.
You asked me who has been a huge impact in my life, and I had a few people, but I'm sitting here with Tim and Rebecca, and it wouldn't be fair if I didn't say Tim and Rebecca have just had a huge impact, not just on my life, but my wife's life and our marriage. I think, yes, they led me to Christ, but it was the way they did it, which I just loved, because I don't think it could have happened any other way. I think they...
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Like, what do you mean?
I think if someone came to me and was like, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you need to change today, that wouldn't have worked. I would have ran. And I think what Tim and Rebecca did was they provided guidance, they provided a process, but they let me go through it on my own. And like, Tim never asked, like, hey, how's the drinking going? Or how's this going? It was just every time they saw me, it was hugs, it was encouragement. There was some challenging, but I think the way they led me was the only way it could have happened. And
That's got to be music to y'all's ears for
Wow,
sure.
that's awesome.
yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Tim's a little crazy like myself, so I think
Yes.
that helped. And Rebecca, everyone knows Rebecca asks the greatest questions, and I would be like, oh boy. So it really made me think and reflect.
And then her accent, that's got to be intimidating.
Yeah, you
man.
really
Like,
have to
she
pay attention.
sounds smarter than most people.
You really have to pay attention to what you said.
Does
So
she
I
really
do.
mean
I
what
think
she's saying?
I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for Tim and Rebecca and the Unstoppable program.
Yeah.
Like, I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, man, that's cool. That's real cool. All right, one more.
I forget what the other one was now.
One of the best things that's happened, something unique about you, your personality, life experience, pet peeves, ideal vacation.
Oh, I'll say this about pet peeves, because it's still an annoyance to my wife. Being late. Like, if anyone is even a minute late.
Fist bump right here.
Yes. I get annoyed. I go crazy.
What happens if you're late?
I'm not. If I'm late, it's somebody else's fault.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's I'm trying to rid myself of some of these bad behaviors, but that's what I'm okay with, actually. Yeah, being punctual.
Yes.
Is important to me.
Yeah, yeah. We obviously have a good understanding of just how impactful the Lindsays have been in your life. What were you looking for going into Unstoppable Growth? Like, was there something tangible that you're like, man, that sounds like something that I need, and why? Like, were you looking for healing in an aspect of your life, or just some intense guidance, or what was your motivation in joining?
That's a great question. I thought about that. I don't think I went in with any. I don't even think I knew what I was getting into when I first agreed to join Unstoppable Growth. as Tim mentioned, he asked my wife and I to serve at Next Steps, and we were both like, "What?" But we said yes, and I got to know Tim and I got to know Rebecca, and that's when I really started to explore my relationship with Christ for the first time in a long time. I was a church on Sunday guy at best. Most of the time I had a headache. But it was so important to my wife that I would go. But it was serving at Next Steps that really got me to say, hey, maybe there's more here and I should dig into it. So when they invited us to Unstoppable Growth, I didn't know what we were getting into, but we said yes. And it was probably the third or fourth week when we were asked to share our story, where I just said, you know what? Like, what do I have to lose? I'm gonna share. I'm gonna talk about some of my challenges and my struggles. I was a typical guy, and I didn't want to share anything. I put on a really good front, good career, house, car. I had a boat at the time. From the outside, things looked pretty good. But what I learned through going Unstoppable Growth was I could be vulnerable, and that just lifted a huge weight off of my shoulder and began a journey with Christ that has completely changed my life, changed my marriage, changed my family's life even. So I didn't really have anything I was trying to solve at the time. I thought things were good in my life, but it just really exposed me to some of the pain and the challenges that I had. And I submitted to the process, and it's just been an amazing journey ever since.
Yeah.
And it was you going home, right? And
Yeah,
even having conversation with Danielle
we
about
both
things
shared.
you never shared with each other.
We shared our story with our small groups, and we were actually doing it remote at the time. We would do the small groups over Zoom, and my wife shared her story, I shared mine, and then we got together after, and we just laid everything on the table. We were probably up till 2 or 3 in the morning, sharing things we had never shared before. There were a lot of tears, but the next morning we woke up, and it was like, okay, we're in this together. We're going all in, and as Tim mentioned, now we're leading a group on Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
It's
which
amazing.
I would have never imagined.
Well, it's an absolutely incredible story and an incredible journey, and it's so encouraging when you have participants like Brian and Danielle who just give themselves totally over to God and to His hand in their lives. And one of the weeks is Own Your Story, and it's probably one of the most important weeks of the first third part, where it's all about overcoming adversity, is when people can really share some for the very first time, struggles that they've had, what they've tried to overcome, what kind of enemies they've been trying to defeat. And everybody, or a lot of people, are isolated, they're fighting on their own, and then all of a sudden somebody shares something, and then it's like a domino effect, and then they all share. And just to hear...
That's so powerful just in itself. Just like you said, just being putting it out there is huge.
Oh, it's absolutely huge. If nothing else, if they even left the course after that third session and they did the work, the challenge is, if you do the work on the third session, then you want to go all the way.
Yeah.
But even if you did leave, that in itself is a game changer.
Yeah.
And just to see how seriously some participants take it, like Brian and Danielle, and just then go home and then have can you imagine? You've owned something for the first time with a group of guys, and then you own it for the first time with your spouse at home.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Life-changing. Yeah, for sure.
And it was that community. There was somebody who went before me, shared stuff that I would have never shared. And I was like, whoa, like, what is this guy doing? And that led me. What are you admitting?
Reel that back in, dude. You don't want to do that.
But it allowed me for the first time to kind of take off that mask.
Yeah.
And admit that I struggled with alcohol and drugs and selfishness and anger and my temper. These are things I'd never shared before.
Yeah.
And to be able to lay it out, and obviously my wife knew, but like for me to admit it to her and say like, yeah, I've got some problems that I have to start to deal with.
Yeah.
It was so impactful.
Yeah. And I didn't know what you wanted to get into, but I heard your comment about usually having a headache on Sundays. So I would imagine that's because of over drinking the night before. Were you? So that list that you just went off on with anger and alcohol and all that, were these things that were dealt with having gone through this? Was that part of the process of seeing these things not be such a impact in your life, like a bad impact?
I mean, I've been doing that since I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
So it was like, I'm 50 now. So that's like almost 30 years of just that lifestyle of work really hard, go home, self-medicate, that's obviously going to lead to some anger issues and temper and just a hardening of your heart. And I did that for so long, it just became normal to me.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything else. I didn't know any other way.
Yeah.
But again, being vulnerable, sharing that, and having a process to bring that to the Lord, those problems are gone.
Mm-hmm. You know what I love how he described you guys and how y'all interacted with him is it sounds like you're saying they wanted you to be led by the Holy Spirit versus the law, which is the gospel. Like we're released from the you should and should not and do this and it's you're invited. The Holy Spirit wants to lead you into freedom. The Holy Spirit.
And it's also with Unstoppable, right? Even in reading the Bible, it's not about me telling you what to do. Like Jesus lives in you and he will call the things out, but it's realizing that's really for me. So I'm not doing a course because they want me to go through that course, or I'm reading the Bible because they tell me I should be reading the Bible. When you have those moments, we call them Kairos moments, when he talked about sharing the story, is then you start realizing, I think that's something in it for me personally, me and my relationship to Jesus. And then that's why you want to continue. What else is in there for me, how I can grow? With growing is also freedom, healing, all the things that comes with it. And so this is a turning point for many. When you get there and then you grasp it's in it for me, and this God, this Jesus really is for me, and he lives in me, this changes everything again.
Yeah. It's so amazing, like just what you said, Joey. One of the sessions we call Uncover Your Why, and we chose the word uncover because we believe it's already inside of them. And that's the firm belief that when somebody makes a decision to follow Christ, the Holy Spirit is inside of them.
Yeah.
So I'm coming as a participant in the course, or maybe as a coach or a small group leader. I'm not coming with the understanding I've got to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
I'm coming with the understanding that he is already inside of you and he's leading you. And now all we need to do is help each other open our eyes and see where he's leading and then follow his lead.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, and it was probably 2 months after we finished Unstoppable Growth, I quit my job.
Wow.
Quit. Career I've done for 20-something years, and just said, I'm done. It was having just a negative impact on my life. I spent 90 days reading the Bible, in prayer. Tim was going on some trips down to the Church of the Highlands. I was like, he called me up. He's like, all right, you're not working. Why don't you come with me? Jumped in on that. So I just spent like 90 days just all in on God.
Wow.
And I just think that had a huge impact. Again, not just on me, but on my marriage. As my wife has finally said before, like, you were pretty close to being on your own. So again, it was...
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah, it was.
She's really nice.
We were close to being done, but you were close to being alone.
So it was submitting to that process and then seeing what the Lord could do over the last 18 months. And some things were a struggle to quit. Some things he just took away from me like that.
Dang.
And
so cool.
Share a little bit about what I love about Unstoppable as well is on the one side it's for you, but then at the very end of Unstoppable, it's all about your people of peace. It's all about the person that God's calling you to serve. It's all about, owning your story so that your story helps you help somebody else's story. And share a little bit about your brother and that experience that was.
Oh, it's the wildest thing. So my brother, who's 13 years younger than me, so you've got a little rivalry with somebody that close. He, not a believer at all. And I would share with him what I'm doing with Unstoppable Growth. I tried to get him involved. He was like, no. My brother, who had gone through a divorce years and years ago, kind of after that, just took the approach of life is what it is. And he was just kind of floating through life. And that would aggravate the heck out of me. And I think I was annoyed once getting off the phone with my brother, and my wife's like, why don't you offer to do a Bible study with him? I'm like, that's crazy. He's not going to want to do that. But I did. I called him up and I said, hey, why don't you and Millie, his girlfriend, now fiance, why don't you join Danielle and I for a Bible study? So we started the Bible study. We did it Sunday nights. And it was like the first 3, I could tell he was watching TV. And I get like, dude, you've got to take a step here. You've got to start reading the Bible or start praying. And he was like, fine. A week later, he's running around his house saying, I'm free. Like, I have never seen such a transformation.
Wow.
He is all in on God. He just met with his pastor. He's going to be serving at his church. He's bringing his kids to church every Sunday. So I love what the Lord has done for me and in my marriage, but to see what he's done in my brother's life, even my wife the other day, we're like, what the heck? But it is just so amazing that, again, if you say yes to the Lord, what he's going to do in your life.
That's cool. The continual fruit. That's
Yes.
going to really make you guys happy.
Yeah.
For sure. Brian, thanks so much. I have to tell you, too, you don't look a day older than 40, man. You said you're in your 50s?
And I just turned 50.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm excited about my 50s, man. Like, I'm ready to go. I've got purpose. I'm not hungover every morning.
Yeah.
Like, I've got a lot more energy now than I did.
Hey, I got to ask, do you have to be bald to go through Unstoppable? Because we've got two
you're
bald.
in.
Well, Alex just left, too.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I was like, was that a prerequisite? Is there going to be a lady coming in here with her head shaved? Is this a cult? Sweet.
Oh, Lord. Lisa Limehouse, welcome. Husband is Brit, and so welcome to the podcast.
So you do have women in Unstoppable Growth besides Rebecca. All
Yes.
right. All right.
We actually do have a lot of women.
Yeah. We have a lot of women that they say it would be so good if the husbands would join.
Amen.
Right.
But what I love about Lisa, and we'll hear that in her story, she went through Unstoppable Growth twice. And a lot of people go through Unstoppable Growth numerous times. The first time was for you and your marriage.
Yes.
The second time was for your calling.
Yes.
And what I love about your story is, and we'll get into that, is God used your story and the healing that he brought in that story to help others experience a similar healing.
Yeah.
And so you go through it a second time, it's all about your purpose, and then you start this Beauty Beyond Betrayal and have this podcast and coaching.
That's the podcast name, Beauty Beyond Betrayal?
Yes.
Okay.
And have this amazing ministry, which is also happening at Seacoast Church.
Yes.
And you're together with other amazing sisters from Sisterhood, helping people really who are struggling with betrayal.
Yeah.
And so I can't wait to get into your story.
I remember you first run. I did not know, wasn't sure if you were going to make it. You were broken, still like holding on. And now seeing you, I'm so thankful of how you embraced God and did not give up on him and were willing to do the hard steps as well.
Yeah.
So
I was
you.
shattered when you saw me. Like I was in a trillion pieces of brokenness when I first came to Unstoppable. It was literally, for me, I looked at Unstoppable as this is the last lifeline that possibly could save me, number one, because I was so broken. And number two, maybe, just maybe, it might save my marriage. Yeah. That's where I was.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too, like you were so broken, how did you muster up the strength to even show up? And it sounds like you were like, this is my last hope. Like, I don't know what
100%.
else to do.
Yeah. You know, we,
Tell us a little bit about your brokenness, and then what we'll do is with you, we'll wrap up with some background, personal, fun stuff.
Sure,
Let's
sure,
get into
sure.
your story a little bit with when you were entering into Unstoppable Growth. Like, what was your motivation? It sounds like you were wanting healing for your soul and marriage, and
100%. So I thought that my marriage was really great. And then all of a sudden, I was faced with the fact that on April 3rd, 2020, right at lockdown, I found out that my husband had been having a 2.5-year affair with someone in the church.
Whoa.
And it hit me like a tidal wave.
Yeah.
And I had gone through the death of my mom and my dad 6 weeks to the day apart, and other deaths in the family. Nothing compared to the brokenness of betrayal. Nothing. It was the worst thing and the best thing that could have ever happened in my life. And so through that, we ended up getting physically separated. I moved out. And during that time period, we tried marriage counseling. We tried individual counseling. We tried some programs and things of that nature.
So he wanted to keep being married to you. It sounds like.
That was his words, but he kept going back and forth.
Okay.
For another year and a half.
Gotcha.
So until 2021, he kept going back and forth to the affair person.
Okay.
So in 2021, I hear at church that they were having this Unstoppable program and shared some stuff about the program. And I thought, I am so broken that I can't imagine being unstoppable again, because that's what my life was prior to betrayal.
Yeah.
And I said, but you know what? Maybe God can get me there. I trust God so much. And in the midst of all the stuff I've ever been through in my life, I knew that God was good,
Yeah.
no matter what.
So your trust was firm as this was happening and everything.
200%
Wow.
firm.
Yeah.
Without, never, ever, ever had God let me down through anything I had experienced. And I said, even though my marriage might not make it, I know that through this, God will at least heal me. So I told my husband about it, and he was like, well, okay. And then nothing happened. And then I filed for divorce right before we were going to do Unstoppable. And I had to call him to let him know he was going to be served. And he said, no, like the frying pan of God hit him. And he was like, just give me 30 days. I'll go to Unstoppable. I'll do anything. Please just give me a chance. And so we came to Unstoppable. We drove separate vehicles.
Yeah.
And we showed up. And that
I'm just curious, did y'all sit together or it was just
We
kind
did.
of
Yeah.
we did.
But in Unstoppable, it's like you hear the content together, but then the women are in the same group for the whole 10 weeks, and the men are in the same group. So they get to process it with females or with males.
Gotcha.
And so they were in it together while still doing it
Separated.
individually.
Yeah. And during those times, I shared my heart with all the women, and I will tell you that that group of women just rallied around me. And then Britt became very open with the men. And for the first time, he was kind of hit with reality and men speaking truth into his life. And through that, while we were in that round of Unstoppable, we reconciled.
wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
And we even renewed our vows,
Yes.
which was so beautiful.
Wow.
So second round, we came into it with a different perspective. Okay, now we really want God to take us as a couple and make us this beautiful, unstoppable couple. And, the first round of Unstoppable is where the why became a big thing for me. I knew what God was calling me to, because in that first round, even though I was in the midst of betrayal, God called me to start a podcast.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going through my own betrayal. Okay, why do you want me to do this? But I trust God. So I stepped out on a foot of faith and started the podcast. Second round of Unstoppable, my husband and I started seeking God for what he wanted us to do, our purpose with our marriage. And I remember the vision board was the big thing for us. So we put all of our goals and dreams.
Tell us about the vision board.
Oh my goodness. Let's see. We had
You
llama
were the ones
farm.
with llamas.
We had the llama farm on there. That ended up not being a llama farm, but God said, no, we're going to do chickens instead. But we also had on there that God wanted us to do something in regards to the home that we were currently in, the property that we currently owned, the ministry and practice that I had, all of these things that become a power couple to eventually have my husband step into ministry and practice with me. All of this was on our vision board. I will tell you, since the last time I was here with each of you, and as I sit here today, everything on that vision board has come to be.
Wow.
100%.
Wow.
In December, only God. In December, God told us in October of last year, God told us to sell our home and our property. We started praying and said, would you please bring the person? Before it went to market, they actually walked on our doorstep and asked if they could see our home. They bought it. We actually now own our home mortgage-free. That was one of the things on our vision board, to be debt-free, not have a mortgage.
So
we
good.
do not have a mortgage. We were able to go debt-free. And as of 1 month ago, my husband put in his notice, and I'm getting really choked up. And May 1st, he's walking away from a career, and he's joining me full-time in my practice. He started working with me a month ago. He received his certification, and now together we have extended Beauty Beyond Betrayal to have underneath it Marriage Redesigned, which is our marriage program, where we are on a mission to help restore 1 million marriages from the devastation of betrayal globally.
Wow. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Man.
Wow.
And we are seeing God do it.
Yeah.
We just had a couple this weekend that I'd been working with for 3 months. We bring them into our home for 2 days, and we cook for them, and we minister to them, and we take them through a roadmap to restore their marriage. And they walked away with this new sense of God did allow betrayal for the betterment of our relationship. And that's what we're doing with the couples now.
Yeah. And obviously, the four of us being believers, we know that God could have brought healing to your marriage any way that God wanted to.
Yeah.
But how instrumental was Unstoppable Growth in that process of reconciliation? And now it sounds like your marriage is better than it's ever been. Because I've walked through a few couples through affairs, and that's typically what happens. If they stay together, their marriage is better than it's ever been, because it's like you have to work. Yes, everything's out now.
Yep.
So how instrumental was Unstoppable Growth?
Well, what I loved about Unstoppable is it gave a roadmap. Like every week you went and there was a tried and true proven roadmap that we would walk out as to, where you currently are, like digging the ditches of each of the pillars in your life so that you could get reestablished, finding out your why. Like there is a purpose behind God creating you. I know that my purpose is to literally help Christian women and couples to find hope and healing after the devastation of betrayal. I know that God wants me and my husband now collectively together, because we went through Unstoppable, to snatch couples from the fires of betrayal. Satan seeks to destroy marriages. We are on a mission to save marriages. Like here we could have been a statistic. And God turned that around. And through Unstoppable, we had to dig deep into our own personal stuff. And then it gave us the ability to now come back together as a couple and take those tools and use it within our relationship. And then vision cast what God had in store for us in the future.
Wow.
And what is also so cool, visible with your why statement, the why statement can be taken of, okay, that's going to be my focus, that's going to be my ministry, but it's really my what I'm breathing. I'm living it out with my husband, I'm living it out with my children. And so you are still working towards this great marriage that you're having right now of continuous investment with your why statement. So it's not just whatever God is calling me, everybody else gets to have. The better half of me, my best friends, like if you're single, what are the friends I'm around me? What are the people I'm surrounded me with? I'm also living it to them. It's not just a work description of something, and you're totally living it. That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, and I love that. I love how you describe the vision board, and because the vision board comes at the end of our program, and it gives our participants the perspective of what God wants to do through them, or in them and through them to others. And, the vision board is not about manifestation. It's not about, thinking of something that we want and let's manifest it into our lives. But when you go through the program and God does a great work in your life, you start to ask God, what do you want to do in me? What do you want to do through me? And then he's giving you these goals to put up on the board. And I love that one of those goals was to help so many other marriages, and he's used you in a mighty way.
And I will also say with Unstoppable, it helps you to understand that all of the things that you've been through in life, you can have these really high moments, these great things, but some of the great things intertwine with the hard things. So for me, the hardest thing I had to come to grips with through Unstoppable was the most difficult experience in my life was betrayal. What I had been through with my husband. But it was also the best thing that had ever happened in my life. And I can sit here today with 1,000% conviction in my heart because of what God is doing in me, in my marriage, in the marriages we get to serve. I can say with 1,000% conviction that while I would never want to experience betrayal again, I would again.
Yeah.
Just to be where I am today.
Wow. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
So good.
That's powerful stuff. Yeah, I went through a mental health crisis in 2019, and I think I can say the same thing about that. Like, it's the worst thing I've ever been through, but had I not gone through it, I wouldn't be the same person that I am right now. Yeah. Which reminds me of what our faith is centered around, the cross. Like, the most injustice thing that's ever happened, God being crucified, and it's the best thing that's ever happened for all of us.
Come on.
So
That's
true.
right.
Well,
And he's been betrayed.
Yeah, exactly.
He would remind me time and time again, if there's anyone who understands you, child, it's me.
Yeah.
I have walked the road you have walked. So just follow the path that I'm laying out before you.
Yeah.
And you will not only survive, but you will thrive greatly through this.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's awesome.
Powerful stuff. Let's take some steps back and let's let the listeners. I know, seriously, I don't want to. I want to just go dive deep in that for a couple hours. But where were you born? How long have you been in Charleston? Let's get some background information on you.
So I was born in Wilmington, North Carolina. My mom and dad separated when I was 6, and we came to Charleston.
Yeah.
And I have been a Charlestonian ever since, and I just love being
Give me a year.
here.
Give me a year. Like when you came to Charleston.
Gosh.
Because I've been here my whole life.
63, so I don't
Gotcha. Back in the day.
Back in the day, when the Cooper River bridges were actually there, I'm aging myself. Yeah.
Oh, I remember when they blew those things up.
I
Wasn't
do
that crazy? Yep. Well, how long have you been Christian? Like, did you grow up with going to church?
I did.
Yeah.
I grew up going to church. However, I call it a Damascus Road experience when I was 30.
Okay.
So I was the betrayer at the age of 25. That's my unique story, is I speak to both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
So at the age of 25, I actually was the betrayer. And for 5 years, I lived just under the mire and it was a drunken stupor, basically. And at the age of 30, the gentleman who I was having the affair with ended up having an affair. And I walked in on them. And at that point, I was devastated. And a lady at work said, "Look, you have tried everything to medicate your sorrow. How about let's try Jesus? Let's come to church." So at that point, I had like a little 9-month stint. I was in Macon, Georgia. Went to Mabel White Baptist Church. And everyone knew my story, yet embraced me fully. And
that's good to hear, because that's not always the case.
It's not always the case.
Unfortunately.
And they had a Living Scenes program where they were actually doing the Passion of the Christ. And I was one of the women at the foot of the cross. And actually, during one of the performances is where I had a very profound experience with the Lord. And the Lord just really, during that time, through the gentleman who was playing Christ, I just saw the Lord look at me and say, "Look at what I've done for you.
Wow.
Just come to me." And I just was a ball of mess all over the place. I literally was one of the people born again during that program.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Did you get that list to choose from? 10 things about you. You want me to remind you of some of them?
Well, you had asked, what is the worst thing?
Yeah.
Betrayal.
Yeah.
What is the best thing? Betrayal.
Yeah.
They're one and the same.
Yeah.
It was the worst and it was the best because of what God has done.
Mm-hmm.
Then what is something unique about me? Well, what a lot of people don't know is I served as a pastoral counselor on a death row case back in 2007, 2008 with a national case with a gentleman who had murdered a Clemson student. And through that experience, not only did I see God, I was actually the pastoral counselor for the gentleman who was the murderer. Not only did I see God transform this gentleman through it, but also a lot of the families through it, but God did some inner healing work in me in that experience. And I can tell you through that, I can see now that God used that experience while I was in full-time ministry to get me to my true calling today. Because I was dealing with sexual addiction, betrayal, affairs, all of the ugliness of just what Satan does to such a gift that God has given in the biblical covenant of marriage. I saw it back there and didn't realize that during that 18-month stint, God would prepare me to actually help people come out of the darkest of the dark of sexual addiction, deep-rooted affairs, things that most people, when they find out what I deal with, go, how do you do this on a daily basis and it not take you down? Because I literally, every day, I'm in the trenches with men and women, helping them get set free and be made free from these things, from betrayal and the ugliness of sexual sin. And then I come out of it, and then God once again takes me to a higher place. So I know God uniquely put me in that position as a pastoral counselor back then for today.
Dang. Lisa, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wow. So this has got to be your easiest introduction yet, or your hardest? What kind of kid was she growing up? Like when you think of preteen Kiara, what was she like?
Kiara was in charge. Kiara was always in charge, had her head screwed on right. She would make sure that everything was okay with me. That I remembered that I had to cook a dinner or that I had to, be somewhere or do something. She was definitely someone always, the eldest in the family, looking after the other two kids. And the other two kids would complain now. If they were sitting here, they would say, yeah, she always told us what to do.
And she was one that learned very quickly. So or even like sitting underneath a table and getting up and hitting her head. From that point on, she always had a hand over her head, not to hit her head anymore. I remember Kian, remember in the kitchen we had these many doors for the pantry, and he walked literally in every door. And then he looked at me and said, "Oh, what an unlucky day I have today." And you would have learned it right away. Okay, the door is open. I'm not supposed to walk into it.
Kiara started walking with 9 months.
Dang.
10 and a half.
I got places to be.
I knew exactly, like I was there. She saw a shiny CD on the floor. There were like 15 people around in a circle, and we all watched you take your first steps. You had no idea that everybody was watching, but it was like this amazing thing.
Which was perfect.
Congrats.
Because when she was 12 months old,
That was your
really
first
worked
big
hard on
accomplishment,
that.
right?
Yeah.
we thought she's going to be this big sports girl then because she walked so early.
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't.
Yeah. I'm curious for some kids, maybe even at any age, and when I say kids, I mean like sons and daughters. It would be, I don't want to be in like a discipleship thing with my parents.
Yeah.
And I could see some people being like, "Oh, that's a no-brainer. I want to." Like,
Yeah.
what was the thought process for you?
Yeah, I think growing up it was the I don't want to, it was the typical pastor's kid. I don't want to be a pastor. I don't want to be in ministry sort of thing. And then God just rewrote the whole thing. But
Did they invite you to Unstoppable Growth?
yes,
Yeah.
a million times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was probably 10 or 11 or 12 no's before I decided to do it. I joke because they originally, the whole point of Unstoppable Growth was for them to just kind of write down a how-to of what the Lord has imparted to them, and wanted to give it to their kids. Turned out into this, obviously small group curriculum. But so I always joked, I was like, you wrote this for us because we were the guinea pigs. I don't actually need to do this anymore because we did this. This was how you raised me. But I'm glad I changed my mind and ended up going through it anyway.
Sweet. And you were born in Switzerland, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what's your technical title here? The local missions director at North Charleston campus?
Yeah,
I nailed it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I would say coordinator.
Coordinator.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that sound more accurate, or it sounds more official? Director or coordinator?
Director sounds like I'm the boss of
Okay.
stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, it sounds like you are the boss.
Yeah, that's the funniest thing for me. She is the boss, literally, in every situation, in every group. And when you tell her she's the boss, she doesn't want to be called the boss.
Just a humble leader,
Oh, yeah.
Did you pick 3 out of the 10 things to share about you for our listeners?
Yes, but I don't remember.
You want me to
them.
jog your memory? Hobby, favorite thing you own, most influential people in your life, hardest thing you've had to go through, some of the best thing, maybe the best thing that's happened to you, unique, something unique about you, your personality, life experience. Does that jog your memory?
Yes.
Pet peeve, ideal vacation.
Yes. I think I was going to talk about hobby, influential person, and hard season or
Sweet.
hard thing. in
Sweet.
life.
Hit us.
A random hobby that I recently picked up is doing nails. I've been getting my nails done, excuse me, for years at this point, probably 5 or 6 years. And then at some point last year in the fall, I just remember being like, I can't believe I'm still spending money on this and haven't taught myself how to do it. So now I do nails, and I do my friends' nails, and they're all telling me I should open a salon.
You considering it?
No.
No?
It's just a hobby. So I think, that's been fun. I wouldn't call myself a creative person, but I think I'm a selective creative, and that brings me joy. So
Now, see, this is how uneducated I am with women's stuff. When you guys do nails, is it always your natural nails, or do you also
That's a
do
good
artificial
question.
nails?
it depends.
It just depends.
Both.
For me right now, doing my own nails, I had to switch to artificial, and so I get tips. But I think yours are natural,
With
right?
just thing over now,
Yeah, with just the products on it. So it kind of depends. Hard season, we can sandwich it. I think remembering back on a hard season, one of the hardest seasons that I've walked through in my short period of life is our immigration process, specifically my path. Once I turned 21, I was kicked off of the family case. So it was kind of okay, you're on your own, all of the different visas that you'll have to be on.
And that's just how it works, I'm
That's how it
assuming?
works,
Okay.
Yeah, so for the first couple of times that we came here, I was under them, so I never really had to think of anything myself. But this was, I think, 2 years ago. I had to transition from a student status to getting a work permit through Seacoast, and it was tough because it kind of it was a time crunch. Obviously, you're not allowed to stay longer than what the original permit allows you to. So we were a month out from my original permit expiring. And again, I'm leaving out so many different details and processes with all of this. But I came to the point, I remember I actually just came from small group with the same girls that walked through that season with me 2 years ago. But I remember just week after week, all I would do is cry in small group. And
Because you're being able to live here was being jeopardized?
yes.
Wow.
So we truly
And we would have
came.
been here, and then she would have had to go back to Switzerland.
Yeah.
Which is where your son is? Is your son
Yes.
in Switzerland?
Yeah, my middle brother. And it truly came to a point where I like told my closest people, I'm like, I'm actually preparing to move
Yeah,
back.
that's heavy. That's heavy.
And it was this like weird, like,
In between.
yeah, nobody was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's not going to happen. You're literally going to stay. I'm like, no, there's rules to how you can stay in this country, and my rules are expiring. So,
Thanks for the positive thinking, but there's rules here.
It's so true. Americans love to whitewash. Like when you say something, it's like, no way.
No, you'll be fine.
but it was this like, I mean, I was, I don't know, like 23 at the time. So it was this like, I knew God called me to the States, which is why I had moved here in 2019, went to school for ministry, was on staff with Seacoast. So it was this like, Lord, where are you? I've obeyed. I'm here where you've called me. And now, okay, he's maybe making a way for me to go back home, and maybe America isn't it. So it got down to the wire. And then like 2 days before Christmas, I got notice that it was approved. So literally like final 2 or 3 weeks before I would have had to actually book a ticket.
That had to be tough for y'all too. Golly.
Yeah.
All right.
So
One more.
I would say this is gonna make his head big, but one of the most influential people in my life is my dad. Sitting across from me. I tell him as often as I can, but it is such a gift to have him as my dad, not just because of the person he is, but just the leader that he is to people in general, and then just the honor that I got to grow up under your leadership and your parenting and your household. But the way, like if you've been around Tim at all, the way he leads and inspires other people, I would say he does it like times 10 at home with my mom and my brothers. So I definitely, one, wouldn't be the person I am today, nor be at like in life where I'm at physically if it weren't for his leadership, the way he inspires me in faith, in life, challenges me to do better, to do more, one for the kingdom and for the glory of the Lord, but just getting to experience the blessing because of that. So
wow. I think what she's really saying is
Man, as a father, wow, you couldn't ask for anything better than to hear something like that, you know. That's awesome, man.
well, I think, what Kiara has been able to do really well is that she's been able to follow the Lord and allow her heart to be moved, touched, and transformed by Him. So it doesn't matter it doesn't matter as much who the father is, who the leader is. If you have a humble heart and you're willing to grow and learn, then you can do that from anybody, including myself. So.
Or maybe she had a really good dad. I'm going to stick with your story.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's also, you won because you have such a big faith and big belief, and you see that more in her and the boys and other people too. And so it is, you love her for the more that God has for her, and she was able to embrace that. And so I agree with the two of them. Yeah. Well done, Tim.
one big family affair.
Yeah, we're gonna challenge him just to accept this, and we're gonna move on from the conversation.
There you go. Just leave it there.
So it sounded like they were saying, Kiara, do this, do this, do this.
Yeah.
What finally made you change your mind from a no to a yes?
Good question. I honestly don't really remember specifically what did. I think I just got tired of them asking.
So part of it was probably, I love my parents. I want to support them.
Yeah.
But I would assume you wouldn't be sitting here if it hadn't made a pretty significant impact on your life.
Yeah. No, I think in previous seasons, I was also afraid to be vulnerable and truly honest, one with them, and then feeling like if I were to go through Unstoppable, stuff may get aired that I don't really want them to know about. So I think I came to a point in time where either I ended up telling them myself, and then I was like, okay, now they know I can go through Unstoppable and like be in the small groups and stuff. But I think, it came to a point in my life where I was like, I had dealt with some like lust struggles in my past. Like had a porn addiction when I was a younger teen, and then that just kind of spiraled into more things later on in life. But where I just came to a point in life where I was like, okay, I want a tangible hold on this sin struggle that I can't seem to like get a grip of, and then also feeling like, okay, I want a plan. I want to know like what my next step is, and not just feel like I'm being bullied by the enemy. And because of obviously their testimony and again knowing what the baseline of Unstoppable Growth is, knew that, okay, a 10-week course sounds like the perfect thing for me to do and just, get started and see what the Lord will do. So, got to experience that, and it was really awesome.
And that is one of the sort of the biggest feedback from Unstoppable Growth participants is the word intentional. Is like that's really sort of helped them become more intentional in their relationships, in their habits, because day to day you're distracted by so many different things. And as you go through life's journey, you're not only distracted, but you've got an enemy coming at you. You're dealing with your own sin and habits. You're dealing with so many different things. It's really hard to pull back. It's really hard to take a step back, out of the forest and look at the forest when you're in the trees. And I think the whole process empowers people to, it's okay to have that time. Take that time, take a step back, evaluate where you are. You might not be in the worst situation in the world, the worst circumstance, doesn't matter. Wherever you are, there's a next step.
Yeah.
And then, take a moment to pour some vision into it, to think about what God wants to do in the next chapter of your life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite thing leaving Unstoppable Growth was the vision board that we do towards the end of the course. Just a very tangible, like, these are your 5 capitals that the Lord's given you to steward. What are some things you feel like He's calling you to steward in those areas? And so I have that vision board in my bathroom to this day, and it's like helpful because the bathroom, I go there every morning. I go there multiple times a day, to where I'm like, okay, I get to see these things. And the whole purpose and vision for me to start it again was I wanted something tangible to grow towards. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What's unique about Kiara?
Oh,
Well, it is. I mean, yes, if you know the Enneagram, she's a 1, makes things better, is perfectionist, which can be a challenge for you too. But the good thing with that is this keeps you open what could be better, even for my own life. And now you being the young one, we just talked about even having younger people in podcast or wherever. Mm-hmm. I think it's you're pivotal for so many others to, yes, on one side we're young and we maybe can achieve or get to places because of the energy or strength that we have on our own, and because we have access to Google and all the knowledge from there. But you being an example of, hey, you can be led by a process that even can empower you for the stage where you are now, even more than maybe everything else, by also allowing you to focus, who am I in all of that? Because the whole, you can be distracted with so many things. And I always say it's mostly the good things. The challenging things are obvious, but then walking through it and having a vision board, and you are such a great example with that, is it helps you of what is really my next step. So when things come, you can almost look through it of, is this really called for me? Oh no, I can say no to this because that's not what I'm going to go for. And so I love your easiness with what you have, even reaching then the young ones who are already looking up to you. I mean, we hear the groups that you're leading, the young ones that you're leading, everybody loves you, and you are such a great testimony of the more, but you can be focused with it. And this actually has much more power than if you're everywhere at the same time.
So many warm fuzzies right now.
I know, this is fuzzy, and I'm going to get even more fuzzier, because what I love about Kiara, she's very similar to Rebecca in this, is that people are very important to them. So they'll always know people's names. They'll always know people's stories. They send out prayers in messages. They, introduce me to kids, children, and parents, and all this stuff. So being somebody who can't even sometimes remember the name of the person that they've spent the last 10 years with or whatever, and more sort of task focused, I forget how important people are and how important relationships are. And it's always just been such an amazing gift to me, which really pulled me back into the reality of where I'm living. I'm not living in this inside world in my head and in my heart with the content that I have and with what I think is so important for the future. I have to realize it's all about people. And both Kiara and Rebecca do that for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we're glad I know they're super glad, but I think we're all glad you're in the States still.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
praise God. I know.
True.
Awesome.
All right. Welcome, Samantha Hughes. So good to have you here on the Seacoast podcast. Wow. And your last name, Hughie or?
Hughie.
Hughie. What's the difference?
It depends where you're from, I think.
I know my wife thought she's from Iowa, and she thought when she saw the sign, she thought it was Bonjalays instead of Bojangles. She's like, oh, Bonjalays. Like, is that how snooty people say it?
Right, yeah. Like with us, it was funny because, so it's pronounced Hughie. And when we moved to South Carolina when I was 8, everybody down here said Hughie because there's a Hughie Street in Columbia. And then there's Hughie, the town that's near us. And then people would ask, like, what's its origin, what have you? And it depends which side of the family you ask. Some say it's Huguenot, and so it should have this.
Yeah.
The rest of us go, no, we're from peasant stock, and in old Poland. So
You just got back in town from the Final Four women's. Fun stuff.
it is fun. It's always good to see student athletes, be so successful and really reach the epitome and get to see lots of friends and colleagues from my previous career. So
that's cool.
Samantha went through Unstoppable Growth online, which is also a course. We have people meeting in locations at church campuses, at home, and we also have an online group. And she was actually in Rebecca's coaching group, in Rebecca's small group, and just experienced amazing transformation. And we're excited to hear the story. But you have been in the past, you're just not anymore, but Unstoppable Growth plays a large role in your next chapter. But you were in collegiate athletic sports at college, big colleges like Texas A&M.
You were the athletic director?
No, I was the senior associate athletic. I was on the senior leadership team. I was in a role called the senior woman administrator, which is the highest ranking female in the department. And I had a lot of oversight of lots of teams. Oversaw our contract with Adidas and some other things like that. So my stops were, I was at Illinois, Michigan State early in my career, and then at Wake Forest for several years as a member of their leadership team, then Georgetown University, and then I was at the University of Delaware as the deputy, and then I went out to Texas A&M, was there. It was fun. It was when we joined the SEC, and the SEC network launched. It was really fun. Redid a stadium to the tune of about $500 million. Which was crazy at the time, but it was a lot of fun. And then I like to say completed my on-campus career as a director of athletics at William & Mary in Virginia.
Dang.
And I know, like, when Americans hear that, they're like, wow, just like you.
Yeah, because I'm a sports guy. I'm just like, that's neat.
Yeah, and when I'm in conversations with people, they're all going, wow. And I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Coming from Switzerland, coming from
you have the
Ireland.
club sport program there.
Yes, we have club sport, but not like you do here, like the schools and everything like that.
Like when you hear Texas A&M, you're like, that's probably a big school. When I hear Texas A&M, I'm like, sports icon.
Wow.
Just such a huge football program and then everything program.
That's
so I'm a big Clemson guy. So I've been very happy about the last 10, 15 years of success. So yeah.
And Samantha is also doesn't come from the Seacoast Mount Pleasant campus, comes from the Somerville campus, serves with Pastor Roy and Pastor Josh Mitchum there on the guest services team, part of the Dream Team.
That's cool. Roy and I graduated together.
No way.
Yep, class of 95. Well, I'd love for people to hear a little bit more background information on you, and then we're going to get into how Unstoppable Growth has impacted you. But where were you born, and how long have you been in Charleston? Because you've been all over the place.
So I was born in Mount Kisco, New York, but only lived there for about 6 months. I'm one of 5, and we were all born in a different state, and I'm the only girl of the 5.
Yeah.
So we moved.
And say that place again?
Mount Kisco, New York.
Mount
It's in
Kisco.
Westchester County, about 30 minutes outside the city.
Okay.
My father was practicing law in the city at the time. And then we moved to Virginia. And then when I was about 8, we moved to a little tiny town in South Carolina called Eastover, which is about halfway between Orangeburg and Columbia.
Gotcha.
There until I went away to school.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And are you still in the athletics department? Like, are you still doing that kind of work?
I'm not. Sort of ancillary to it, but I am not on a campus any longer. When I left William & Mary, I worked for a tech firm that's related to sports for a while. And then after Unstoppable Growth, decided it was time. I felt the Lord saying there's something more. And so we were really successful. It was a startup, and it was a fun. The owner's a strong believer. He started it when he was still a basketball player in college, and so left that at the end of last year. And I've been doing consulting. And right now, my largest consulting gig is I'm the executive director of the National Collegiate Equestrian Association.
Dang.
And we are headed down to Ocala next week for our national championship.
That's
We're
cool.
really excited. Yeah.
You said equestrian. That's horses and
That's
stuff.
horses and
Nice,
stuff.
nice. So the young lady that works the studio, she's big into horses and equestrian. And what's the plural? Equestrianing? How do you say that?
Riding?
Like that now? Yeah. I don't know. So out of those 10...
We're going to have a good time.
Yeah. Like, what is a person that's into equestrian?
They're an equestrian.
Oh, okay. So you use the same word.
I mean, if you want to use the feminine, it's probably equestrian, but
because you got football and then football players.
Right.
So equestrian,
student athletes, same, like an
Gotcha.
equestrian or a rider, or
Yeah. Sweet. All right, give us your which 3 that you pick. I'm
3 that I
always
picked.
excited to hear which one.
One of the most influential people in my life,
All right.
and one of the hardest things I've gone through, and then the best thing that's happened.
All right. Let's hear them.
So the most influential person, that's hard because there's several, but I would have to say my mother, Labusa. She married my father when I was 5 years old, and she was 23, young. My biological mother died right after I turned 4 of cancer. And before she died, she said, I would like this woman to raise my children. She apparently told my father that. And just the selflessness with which my mom has, gave up a lot of her dreams. She was an incredible equestrian in her own right, likely would have represented our country. And the fact that she felt that God said, no, this is what you're supposed to do. And she took on 3 of us and my dad, and then she adopted the 3 of us. They had 2 more, and she's just been a rock for all of us and continues to be.
Wow.
And she's just this very quiet but very steady, and when she does speak, you listen.
Yeah.
It's one
Would
of
she be
those.
cool if I asked how old she is now?
Yeah, absolutely. So it will be 75 in December.
Dang.
Yeah, and so she's just one of these, she's one of these prayer warriors that does it in such a way and has covered our whole family for so many years in that, and just as a source of strength.
Yeah. Cheers to your mom.
She's the best. She really is. I'm very grateful.
That's cool. All right, continue on.
Okay, so the next one was one of the hardest things I've gone through. I think one of the hardest things I have gone through was the change in career. These guys have heard it several times. I was so consumed with what I did, what my title was. That's where I got my self-worth. I think that's where I got my affirmation, is what I could do, how well I could perform. I mean, my whole life it had been about, pursuing excellence to the nth degree.
So like an unhealthy ambition, would
Maybe
you say?
it could be, but I don't know if it's unhealthy. I think it's rather than finding one's worth in the fact that I'm a child of God,
Right.
instead chasing these worldly, affirmations that say, this is what you need to do.
So maybe even good ambition with a foundation that you would have rather have. Yeah. Okay.
So
Gotcha.
when that, I like to say when that dream died, and I walked away, I remember staring out my back window at this beautiful setting the house where I lived, and I just went, gosh, I'm 52 years old. What do I have to show for it? I've done this, I've had this great career, but I don't know what else to do. And just this sense of gosh, and that was really hard, making the decision to walk away There were lots of details to that we don't need to go into, but making the decision to walk away and pivot from a career that I thought I was supposed to do, for the rest of my career, and to say, no, this is not the space to do it in. And for a lot of reasons, decided that William and Mary was not the place where I wanted to be any longer. That was really hard.
Yeah. Is it still hard not being?
No, not nearly what it was. No, because I see the what I would like to say a severe mercy in it, and then being able to just see how God's worked. Which when we get to the best thing that's ever happened, you'll see. So, I leave there. I stayed for a couple of years working for this tech firm. I could work remotely, and then made the decision like, I think it's time to sell this house and do something else. And so I actually called my parents. I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about selling the house. Can I rent the guest cottage from you? And they said, come on down. And then about 6 months later, the best thing that ever happened. And I was diagnosed with a really aggressive form of cancer.
That's the best.
It is, because it was a gift that just unlocked so many.
Waiting. I was watching you.
You were watching. I know. I know. I'm going to look at her because I'm like, she knows what's coming.
The best thing that's ever happened to you, cancer.
Yeah. And you want to know why?
Yeah.
Because the Lord used it to break through so many painful things, not only for me, but for my family. So my mother died of breast cancer 50 years before I was diagnosed. That story I talked about. And just the ability for my family to come around this, and even my adopted mom, because she had known her. She was my babysitter, right? And so that's why I want her to raise my children. To walk through, she went to every chemo with me. My father drove me to drove us to every appointment. And he has since said, I couldn't save your mom, but I think being able for him to do those kind of things really helped in healing that. And my brothers too. Gosh, I got time. I found Seacoast. My relationship with God is so much stronger. And my cancer was a gift.
Golly.
Yeah, it really was.
So what's the correlation time-wise with you joining Unstoppable Growth and your cancer?
So I finished my treatment in October of 23.
Okay.
Is that right? Yes, October of 23.
Real recent stuff.
Yeah, so then started going back in person to Seacoast. I couldn't go in person, obviously, when I was going through chemo, but Seacoast Online became my church. And so then went back, started volunteering in our warming center in Somerville, and just got sucked right into this incredible culture and incredible church. And then it was the next fall. Yeah, I guess we started in August or September of 24. So a year later.
Yeah. What was your motivation to take part in Unstoppable Growth? Like, what did you hear about it?
Bullied into it?
Oh,
no,
bullied.
I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. No, it's funny. I didn't know anything about it, and I came to an all staff as a volunteer. They said, "Hey, would you like to come to all staff?" I'm like, "That sounds amazing." And I was, as Tim mentioned before, I'm part of the dream team in Somerville, and so I sat down, and this rather energetic individual sits down next to me and says, tell me your story, which is interesting because that's the line I usually use to start conversations. And I did. And he goes, have you heard of Unstoppable Growth? And I'm like, I have not. Tell me more. And so then met Rebecca and joined it. And it was really, really, it was a great time for me as I was kind of coming out of, treatment and healing and thinking about what my next assignment was.
Right. And so it sounds like it may have just been, and I don't say just as minimizing it, you may have just seen it as a great opportunity of growth. Was there anything else you were looking for? Like, man, what he just told me sounds like my heart could really use this because of all the stuff you had been going through.
Well, for me, it was a time of transition, and it was for me figuring out, I knew I was considering leaving this full-time job. And I knew there was more, the Lord I really had this sense of I've got more for you than this. And I loved the company. In fact, he's hired me back on a contract to work on some stuff for him. But for me, there's something more. And I want to know, I've been through leadership courses before, but to do it from a faith standpoint, I thought it was just kind of it was a faith-based leadership course. Oh my gosh, but it's so much more. So for me, that's what I was looking to gain out of it, is just more tools, more ability to, internally look at myself and how I want to do things differently career-wise.
So how was it so much more, using your words, for you personally, like having gone through it and now it sounds like a current participant of it, like what's your life? How is it different?
Well, I think I was looking back through my notes, and one of the things was when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so learning, and really looking when I'm looking at something, even as much as like, do you want to go to dinner one evening? All right, what am I giving up by saying yes to that? Yeah. And does this something that simple, but then something even greater whether it's a potential client who's asked me to work with them or what have you, and to be able to say, does this align with my why statement and my core values? Is this a client who I think my expertise can help? So that's another. And then Rebecca just has this incredible way to ask questions that really make one think.
Second person to say that.
Follow-up question and the follow-up question and the follow-up question. I thought I was, I'm used to doing that from a standpoint. Part of my role in athletics was I worked in NCAA compliance. So a lot of, investigations and whatnot. Rebecca does it in a way that's curious and kind, but also probing. And so that really, it helped me discover the things that were holding me back, and things that I don't know that, like, if you'd asked me what's holding you back, I could tick off all these things, but then to really discover what it was. And it was that self-worth. It was that sense of, how am I worthy of God's love just because I'm his creation, was such a foreign concept to me that I couldn't wrap my brain around that. And so we were able to really dig down to those things. And I now really believe that. I really believe that I've likened it, I've told some people, it's like Abe Lincoln sitting in his big stone chair, right? And he's so stoic. And that's how I used to see God. Like, just don't look at me and you maybe won't realize that I messed up or whatever. To now, it's kind of like, go sit in Abe's lap and he puts his arms around you, even when you mess up and say, gosh, I messed up, Lord, forgive me. And he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's so striking about some of what I've heard of your story is you have the experience, the resume, the accolades that a lot of people would give their right arms for, that sort of success. And yet you still felt empty because that's what you were getting your contentment and your fuel from. And I use contentment loosely because I think you would agree that you weren't truly content.
No, not at all.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think, and that's the shame of it, right? That I don't know that I actually enjoyed it when I was doing it, right? I don't know that I took the time to step back and go, wow, that's a pretty remarkable career for someone who didn't have connections in the athletics world. My family was my dad was a first generation college student who, but for his ability to play basketball, wouldn't have afforded a degree. And then three of my four brothers were Division I athletes. So I knew about athletics, but none of them made it a career. And so I did, and through some serendipitous reasons. And now I look back and I go, that was pretty remarkable, Yeah. And I'm proud of myself. It was a great career. But I keep going back to, there's just more. Right. And all of those things, the disappointments, the heartaches of like losing your mother, and then you see God providing with each heartbreak or each disappointment or each failure, right? Some things that were beyond my control, other things that maybe I could have done a better job, but he provides each way. And when I look in the rearview mirror and I see that, it's just, wow, it really does.
Yeah.
So.
That's what I love about your story. It's a story of somebody who has submitted to that process and allowed the truth. And it all starts with you accepting that truth, that, you have to be vulnerable and you have to be able to share that. You have to be able to acknowledge that. And if you don't start there, acknowledge where you are and, what's holding you back, you can't get to the other truths that God has prepared for you. And I love that.
I think it was failures. It was, and hey, I'm a total people pleaser, right? I'm getting better about it, but I think that led to pursuing so many of the whether it was a career, whether it was a law degree, whether it was, thinking I wanted to be an Olympian, those sort of things. Was I doing that for me? Was I doing that for, at 17, trying to be an Olympian, you're not doing that for anybody but yourself, probably. But, now to feel like each decision I make, each interaction I have, all of the challenges and opportunities and whatever a lot of people say to me, gosh, you've been through so much, you're so strong. I'm like, no, I'm not, and now it was really neat to be with a lot of former friends and colleagues from my previous career this weekend, and just having coffee with a few of them, and they look at me, they're like, something's different. What is it? And just feeling the ability to go, I'll tell you what's different, and talking about God and talking about the Lord, not in a preachy way, because I know who I'm talking to. A lot of them don't have faith, but just saying, this is why you see a new glow.
Right. They asked.
You asked, and so it's the verse of, he really does. I used to think, he does everything for our good. That wasn't good. That didn't. But it's for our good and his glory.
Yes.
I think we forget that part of it, right? Yeah. It's for our good and his glory. Yes. He will use these things for our good and his glory. And if we remember that's our purpose, is to glorify him, whether it's in, I didn't do it so well driving over here because of traffic, not yelling at someone in traffic, not using a horn, although, sometimes you have to get people's attention. But those kinds of things versus thinking that, he'll use all of our hard stuff for our good. No, there's that other part. And that's the part that's so much more important, because if it allows him to be seen through us, gosh.
Yeah.
We get to be part of kingdom building.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
No, this has been great. Thank you. It's an honor, and I'm really humbled to have been asked to share it.
You've been listening to Seacoast Church's Things You Won't Hear on Sunday podcast. You can now become a patron of this podcast and receive exclusive content. Your support goes towards Seacoast ministry efforts in local prisons. Also, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe to this podcast on YouTube for video versions of these episodes. All this information can be found in the show notes. Thanks for listening.